Many entrepreneurs spend a majority of their time trying to outwit and outwork their competition. What can I do to get ahead? How can I take even just 2% of their market share? Well, our guest today is going to tell you how you can use your competition to your advantage and what you can learn from their approach. Our guest is also going to tell you why he pays his employees to read. Keep it locked. Part 1 of this information-packed interview is coming up next.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performance Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy.
Today's guest is Marc Netka, CEO and founder of STS Education, a $29 million company that has a curated set of education-based products, services, and solutions. Marc is a recognized leader in the EdTech market with over 20 years of experience serving K-12 schools throughout the United States. Marc has also made an appearance on the Inc. 5000 6 times. So if you want to grow your company, or just happen to be interested in the future of education, then look no further.
Marc, thank you very much for joining us today. This is a very interesting and special episode. We just finished our 500th episode on Monday, our podcast. And this is the first show, well, technically second show, but I'm going to explain in a second, that is actually going to be video-based as well. So thank you for that. And before we dive in, the first person was supposed to be Jeffrey Gittimer, an amazing sales expert, author. I just recorded him about, 2 hours ago, and I forgot to hit the record button. So it's like, you do something for 500 episodes, although this is our first video one, right? And what happened was I upgraded the system to make sure that it had additional recording capabilities. And now instead of automatically recording, you've got to push a button. And I didn't push the button. So you were supposed to be number 2. You were actually number 1. And as soon as I mentioned before we started broadcasting here that it was Jeffrey, you can't make this stuff up. You did.
That's right. I showed you the book I just finished reading by Jeffrey. And I was telling you that I just handed this out and ordered it for every one of my managers in the company, and I've asked them all, at least my mid-level managers, to do a presentation at our next managers meeting on the book itself. So that's really funny. And by the way, I'm used to being called number 2. So.
Well, I'm always looking to be number 2 in my companies. It's like, right. You know what? Just get me into the number 2. Let somebody else lead the way. It's fascinating. When I was reading your bio and looking at everything, education, continued learning is not only what the company's all about, but I mean, you really take that to heart within your company as well. And you actually pay employees to read. How do I get that job?
You know what? It's funny because a lot of people that come to my business and I show them my book club ask me the same question. Can I come work for you?
Yeah.
And really, that's one of the reasons I do it, right? I want to be a place that people want to come and work. But it's more about, the essence of who we are. As a company, we're in the education technology space. I want us to be more of an education company versus a hardware supplier to schools. And part of that is making sure that continuing education is a big part of the philosophy of the company. And when you're an adult, as you know, the easiest way to continue education is by reading. So I created the book club to give people an incentive. I didn't want to force them to read, except in the case of this book, because I figure managers I can force to read, but the normal employees, I wanted to give them an incentive to read. I figured the easiest way to do that was to pay them for reading. So that's why I created the book club.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start that habit somehow. Literally, I didn't really enjoy reading and start reading until I was probably about 23. Now, obviously, I read in school and I did what I had to do, but I just didn't enjoy reading. It wasn't until I found a book by an author that I really enjoyed that I started reading. It was given to me, funny enough, by my boss. It was a nonfiction book.
Well, I have an employee who actually did come to me and say, thank you for getting me back into reading, and I've turned off the television.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, I just had a conversation with my son yesterday about reading because he's 22 years old. And as you can guess, he really hasn't read a book since he was in high school, other than a textbook in college. And so we were talking about one of my favorite books is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So my son was telling me how he was thinking about reading that book. He wanted to get into philosophy. So I brought home 3 philosophy books that I had sitting on my desk yesterday and said, here, I brought home these books. Read one of them. So he picked one and he went upstairs and he came back down and he said, I read, I thought I read the first chapter, but it was just an introduction by the author. But, I read it. I said, great. It's about getting into the habit of reading. So now make it a habit to, if nothing else, read at least 1 page a day, right? Yeah. That's how you get in the habit of reading.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I read every single day, in the morning before I come into work, but it has to become a habit.
Yeah. No question. I mean, little things done every single day result in extraordinary results. And it starts with just 1 page or just one movement, one thing. The book that I read was Gold Coast. It was Nelson DeMille. It was set up in Long Island. It was about the mafia family, this attorney. They lived next door. It was very racy, very sexual. And I was like, I'm in. It's like, it's got gangsters. It's got money. It's got,
And now with technology, I mean, I not only read hard books, I like to read hard books, but of course I have a book on my phone in case I don't have a hard book with me. And then audiobooks now I'm really big into, and find that a lot of books that I never did read but should have, like I'm listening to Old Man and the Sea right now, right? Ernest Hemingway in my car. And I can really enjoy the book because it's narrated by, someone who's an actor.
Yeah.
So you really have no excuses anymore. You can take advantage of all mediums to consume the content.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on my bike this morning. I'm training for an Ironman, and that takes a lot of biking time. So I'm on the bike. I'm like, I'm not going to spend 2 hours just sitting here doing nothing. It's like, put on an audiobook, put on a YouTube channel. Let me learn something. There's so much content out there. I want to set the basis here, or set the foundation before we go too far in. And I want you to explain to the audience what exactly your company does.
So STS Education is an education technology company that has a curated set of purpose-built for education products, services, and solutions that we sell to kindergarten through 12th grade schools throughout the United States. So when I say curated, I mean we have passed we don't sell everything. There are lots of companies, and this is the difference between being, I guess, a hardware company that supplies hardware to schools versus being an education company that works in collaboration with schools to provide them with the technology they want. Curated means I've passed it through some sort of filter, and that filter for us is, was it purpose-built to be used in schools? Was it built with students or teachers in mind, versus just being any device? I like to use the example of, say, Chromebooks versus an Apple iPad. Apple iPads are used in a lot of schools, but it's not necessarily a device that was built for students. So can you make it work in school and make it work well? Yes, but someone has to put a lot of thought and energy into how that works in a classroom versus Chromebooks, which were designed with students in mind.
Marc, what do you see on the horizon with our educational system? How is it changing? How does it need to evolve? I was going to say, where do we miss the mark? That will be too long of a podcast. What's changing? Where do we need to go? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, I'm not an expert in education by any means. However,
yeah, but you're in this space. You see it all the time, right?
I just finished reading a book called The End of Average by Todd Rose, and he talks about how antiquated our education system is, where we teach to averages and we give people grades based on averages. And, when I look at school, especially higher ed, and I look at technology and how things are changing, I wonder if these massive complexes that we've created, where the cost of education has gone up something like 500% over the last 10 years, where the cost of healthcare has only gone up 200%, and how antiquated the system of having to drive someplace to go get an education based on what someone else thinks is the criteria for me to be able to go get a job. It just doesn't make any sense. So, I think that consuming content on an as-go, on-demand basis and getting a certificate versus a degree, especially in a world that's becoming more centered around technology, is the way of the future. And I fear that traditional campuses will become giant wastelands, of where there's no students. And the problem is that, this university down the street gets an endowment, builds a beautiful, fancy building, raises tuition because of the maintenance of that building. And then the school that's down the street from them has to keep up. So they go out and raise money. And it just never ends. So I think that's where we're going personally.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. It's similar to retail businesses. I would not want to open a business on Main Street and start selling something out of there. I mean, just the cost, the overhead will kill you, because you got the online version that everyone's going to the big Amazon, and what do they want? They buy. I found myself at a bike shop the other day, and I needed a bike pump. And this bike shop had one set of bike pumps. That's all they had, one model. And I'm like, I don't know how good it is. I don't know if it's good or not. I'm like, I'm going to buy it at Amazon. I was there. And it wasn't from a price standpoint. I just said, I want to compare what the different ones are, and I know I'll have it in my place tomorrow.
Yep. And I think that, the whole concept of just consuming content when you want to consume it at your own pace just fits most people's lifestyle today.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I'm starting to – I love how you made that difference between a degree and a certificate. As soon as I thought a certificate, it was like interesting. Like one of the things I'm certified in is neuro-linguistic programming. I went to a program. I did it week after week. I took a test on it. I took professional speaking classes to get certified as a professional speaker. It's things – and I didn't have the skills there initially. I had to go and I had to learn those. And it was one specific thing that results now in a skill set that I can do that I didn't have before. It wasn't about memorizing something. It was about learning how to develop a skill. And I think so often in schools today, it's like, okay, let's just start memorizing stuff. And I think that bus is left.
Yeah, and I think in all fairness, most schools are trying to move away from that and give kids 21st century skills of critical thinking and collaboration and creativity, things around that nature. But it takes a tremendous amount of investment. It also gets teachers that you have to invest in training the teachers to think differently about how they train. So we see all that because we're involved in technology. Yeah. And a lot of the tools that we sell are, meant to enhance 21st century skills or create 21st century learning spaces. So we're on the peripheral edges. We're what comes after they've made the decision to move in a certain direction. But we still get, it's interesting to see what's happening. I mean, I wish I was a student now.
Yeah.
With all the toys and tools they have. To me, I'm sure to them it's like, oh, I have this in my life. It's nothing new, but to me it's totally engaging.
Yeah.
Because I remember taking the big yellow sponge and cleaning the green board if you got in trouble after school.
That's right. And we had the abacus.
I'm dating myself.
Right. You're right. Yeah, it was a different time. I remember going and getting a calculator at Kmart. And it was something like $50 for a little handheld calculator. And back in the 70s, I mean, that was a lot of money.
Yeah, I remember my first TI calculator.
Yes, absolutely.
Financial calculator.
Yep, Texas Instruments. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about how you built your company. I love it. You started in the garage. And you had the original name was, what was it, EduTech? Did I get that right? All right. And it sounded like that went from 2001 until 2010. Did I get that time time frame right?
Yes.
Okay.
I had very much a lifestyle business. I had no employees other than my mom. I showed up in shorts and flip-flops. When school ended at 3:30, I went home. My kids were young, so that worked out well for me. I never had to miss an event at my kids' school. But it was very much a lifestyle business. It wasn't a real business. I kind of, when 2008 hit, I realized that I had built kind of a house of cards. And if I went a month without getting any orders, I was in big trouble. So that's when I redesigned my business in 2010 and created STS Education.
Was it just the economy or something else that was going on at that time where you just said, hey, a light bulb went off and said, I've got to get serious about this?
Well, the economy was what spurted. I mean, I had a moment of panic in 2008, like I'm sure a lot of people did. But it's just my nature that rather than sit and worry, I sat down and planned. And so I would go to Starbucks every morning. I would read some books to get my mind in the right place. And then I would start writing in my notebook about what my business should have looked like if I had been doing it right. And I realized there were companies that started after me in the same space who had grown much larger than I had. So that really was the impetus. Just realizing I had to change if I wanted to build a real business.
And did you go and look at those competitors? Did you start to see what they were doing, ask questions?
Yeah, I did. I actually, because I was thinking maybe I could sell what I had. So
okay.
I actually went up and visited my largest competitor. They invited me up, saw what they were doing, realized the opportunity I was missing.
Yeah.
And visited another competitor as well, who actually I went down the road of trying to sell my business to and created a business plan for them based on them acquiring me. They ended up pissing me off, and I said, "Screw you!
I'm going to go do it."
That business plan and created STS.
Excellent. Yeah. And the reason I want to bring that up is, I see so often that entrepreneurs and business owners will disregard the competition. Kind of push it off. It's like, we don't have any competition, or they're not really competition. They're not really doing it well. There's so much that you can learn from people in your space. One, what to do, and sometimes what not to do. But it really takes an intelligent, I think, leader to go, you know what? They're a competitor. They have some market space. They're doing something right. Somebody's paying them something. The doors are still open. They're making profits. They've got business. Something's happening. What can I learn from them? And those are the entrepreneurs, those are the CEOs that really take off. And it's clear by what you've been able to do in the last 7 years, right? 2010. I mean, extraordinary. Inc. 5000.
One thing I've really been fortunate and good at, I guess, maybe it's just a testament to how good a sales guy I am, but I have literally been able to get invited to every single one of my competitors' facilities and go meet with them and talk to them about business.
That's great.
And maybe it's also part that I don't really keep any secrets. Like, I probably talk too much when I go, and maybe they get more out of it than I do. I don't know. But I literally have been into pretty much every one of my competitors' facilities and talked with their CEOs about what they're doing. And it has helped me.
That's great. I mean, you ended up on the Inc. 5000 list 5 times, 6 times?
6 years in a row, yes.
6 years in a row. The Inc. 500 list, 3 of those years?
Yes.
I mean, dude.
2 of those years.
2 of those years.
I forget, but
impressive.
Thanks. I mean,
No, don't go all, come on, man.
Well,
Stand up and just say.
Joke about it. I mean, it's a nice honor, but I almost see it as more of a marketing thing because none of those companies, you can't tell which companies on that list are profitable.
Well, that's
right. You only know about revenue. So the company that made it 2 years in a row at number 1 was out of business 3 years later. So, I take it with a grain of salt. But having said that, I think that's one of the problems with a lot of entrepreneurs or A-type personalities is we tend to minimize our successes.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why I journal every day and try to write down what I've done so that I can look back and say, you know what, I did accomplish something this year.
Yeah.
versus just being super critical about we stink at this is no good. And that tends to be how we operate a lot of us.
We're all kind of wired that way. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter @ThorConklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.
Be on the lookout for part 2 of our conversation with Marc, where he tells us why you should celebrate your successes, as well as why you should be focused on your company's bottom line rather than the top. I'll see you guys on another episode of Peak Performers Podcast.